Hey guys, what's up? Kalamazi here, and this is my 8.0 Affliction Warlock guide. In it, I will be discussing the recent tuning afflictions received, optimal talent builds, Azerite traits you should be looking to acquire, both single target and AoE rotations, as well as a few other topics along the way. If you guys have any additional questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below, and I'll be sure to get back to you. I will also be releasing videos for Destruction and Demonology, so be sure to hit that subscribe button if you want to be notified when they are posted. There are a few specific Azerite traits that you should focus on acquiring as an Affliction Warlock. Currently, both Archive of the Titans and Laser Matrix are very close to one another in Sims, with Archive narrowly beating out Laser Matrix. Both of these Azerite traits are found only inside Uldir, however, and drop from only certain bosses. Currently, as of September 18th, after the sudden onset nerfs, Wrecking Brilliance, Inevitable Demise, and Cascading Calamity are the strongest Affliction-specific Azerite traits. Sudden Onset is still strong in the same places that it was before, but not nearly as overpowered as it was. You will gain a good bit more from Inevitable Demise in Mythic Plus than you will from a trait like Cascading Calamity and even Wrecking Brilliance at times. I will leave a link in the description below which has the current Affliction Azerite trait sims, and will also update the link in case there is more tuning to be had. Now when it comes to actual talents for Mythic Plus, we have a few different options in each row, and I'm going to be sure to go over all of them and then tell you which one I prefer the most and which I think is most powerful for Mythic Plus. In the level 15 row, we have the choice between Nightfall, Drain Soul, and Deathbolt, and the clear-cut choice and winner here is easily Deathbolt. Unfortunately, Drain Soul is just drastically undertuned, and the proc rate on Nightfall as well as the damage is just very low. Deathbolt synergizes really well with how Affliction plays in Mythic Plus, and is just the strongest talent overall in the level 15 row. In the level 30 row, we have the choice of Writhe and Agony, Absolute Corruption, and Siphon Life. And realistically, the only two choices you're going to have here for Mythic Plus are either going to be Absolute Corruption or Writhe and Agony. I've been running Writhe and Agony a lot more lately, and if you have 2 or really 3 pieces of Sudden Onset Azerite gear, Writhe and Agony pulls ahead of Absolute Corruption by a good bit. The main way you can actually tell here if you want to run Writhe and Agony over Absolute Corruption is you can ask yourself, are the mobs going to be living long enough to the point where my Writhe and Agony, or my Agony stacks, will reach 15 stacks and be able to maintain that over the course of the pull? If you are running Writhe and Agony instead of Absolute Corruption, you do have to keep in mind that you have to recast Seeded Corruption every 10 to 12 seconds or so, because your corruptions will be falling because we're not running Absolute Corruption here. If you're running Absolute Corruption instead of Writhe and Agony, it makes your trash damage, opener, and I guess rotation in general much easier. You really only have to maintain agonies before they fall and just spread a few unstable afflictions amongst your targets unless you're trying to burn down a priority target. You want to focus that one down with typically a haunt on it as well, and you can use your Darkglare to really burn that priority mob down. In the level 45 row, we have the option of Demon Skin, Burning Rush, and Dark Pact. I typically err on the side of Dark Pact when it comes to higher level keys or tyrannical keys where there's going to be abilities that are going to one-shot you or deal a tremendous amount of damage to you. I do take Burning Rush from time to time just to move quicker through the dungeon, and I don't really see an issue with taking it in lower to mid-tier keys, but you're going to want to be running Dark Pact in higher level keys because some abilities just hit really hard. In the level 60 row, we have the choice of Sow the Seeds, Phantom Singularity, or Vile Taint, and realistically the only option here we have in the level 60 row, whether you're on single target encounters, AoE encounters, or Mythic Plus, is Phantom Singularity. Unfortunately, Vile Taint's damage is just a little too low, and the slow is not really as relevant as I even thought it would be when I was testing it on beta, and it does cost 1 soul shard as well. And Sow the Seeds just been once again nerfed again from where it was in Legion, from spreading 2 seeds to 1, effectively only spreading 2 seeds of corruption once you take this talent. So Phantom Singularity really becomes a go-to talent here regardless. It's a strong single target DPS gain as well as a decent AoE DPS gain on trash packs if you put it on a mob that's going to live for the duration of the actual dot. Now in the level 75 row, the options are Dark Fury, Mortal Coil, or Demonic Circle, and Demonic Circle has been my clear-cut winner through the vast majority of Mythic Plus. There are certain bosses like Razan and Atal Azar where you can easily cheese his LOS Sphere mechanic by dropping your circle near a certain spot and then teleporting right to it the second before the cast goes off, effectively netting you a little bit more DPS. Now in the level 90 row, we have 3 choices, one being Shadow's Embrace, another being Haunt, and the third choice being Grimoire of Sacrifice. In my opinion here, Haunt is the clear-cut winner. It plays really well in the Affliction's overall playstyle in Mythic Plus, like when there's certain priority mobs in a pack that you want to burn down. Affliction's really strong at that. You can throw Haunt on it and generate resources from the surrounding mobs, whether it be shards from Agonies or Inevitable Demise stacks from Corruption, and pump all of that into one target while also having Haunt on that, dealing a tremendous amount of damage to a priority target. It also brings you higher DPS on bosses and things of the sort when you run it with Phantom Singularity to either Writhe and Agony or Absolute Corruption. Grimoire of Sacrifice does have a bit of play from time to time, but I'm really not a big fan of it. One positive thing about Grimoire of Sacrifice, however, though, is that it binds your command demon ability to you. If you sacrifice your Voidwalker, you get the actual Shadow Bulwark bound to your character instead of having it active only when your pet's out. The same goes for the Spell Lock from the Fell Hunter and the other abilities you have from the Imp and Succubus as well. Now finally, in the level 100 row, we have 3 options here. One being Soul Conduit, second being Creeping Death, and the third one being Dark Soul Misery. Realistically, your only options for Mythic Plus are going to lie either in Dark Soul Misery or Creeping Death here, just due to the fact that Soul Conduit is pretty undertuned right now, and Dark Soul Misery and Creeping Death provide a lot more when it comes to trash encounters or boss encounters, or both, honestly. If choosing Dark Soul Misery, you're going to gain more than you would from Creeping Death on boss encounters for single target damage, as well as having a strong 2-minute cooldown for heading into priority trash packs that you need to kill quickly. Creeping Death is going to provide more of a passive, static damage boost across the entire dungeon because, like I said, it is a passive and reduces the actual duration of all of your dots, which will effectively have them deal their full damage, like it says here, 15% faster. So if you're looking for a bit more spread, even damage on all the trash packs and bosses throughout the dungeon, you lean more towards playing Creeping Death. And if you're looking to have more of a 2-minute CD cooldown for certain trash packs and a little bit higher damage in your opener with bosses, in conjunction with Darkglare as well, you want to roll towards Dark Soul Misery. Now this is the actual opener you want to follow running the Writhe and Agony Dark Soul Misery build in Mythic Plus. So when the tank's going to run in and pull the actual trash mob or pack, you can precast Seed of Corruption here, right into a Haunt, which will pop your Seed of Corruption, then drop a Phantom Singularity. At this point, I'll hit Dark Soul Misery and apply Agony to 3 or 4, however many targets you have here, and basically just start spreading Unstable Afflictions among those targets here. It's very important to keep in mind that you want to hold 1 Soul Shard to refresh your actual Corruption every 10 seconds because we're no longer running Absolute Corruption here. Past that, it's really important to maintain your agonies here at 15 stacks when they fall, or if they fall. It's a tremendous damage loss. Besides that, if you're going to use Darkglare on a trash pack or it's not a priority mob you're actually trying to focus down, just hit it on basically on cooldown when you have your corruptions and agonies rolling, and gives you a window to actually fit in a little bit of Shadow Bolts as well as a few Unstable Afflictions because all your dots are going to be extended by a tremendous amount here. As we can see here, Agony is dealing a tremendous amount of damage here as well, so it's very important to keep your agonies rolling at 15 stacks and prioritize it over Corruption if need be. You're going to need to refresh Corruption every 10 or so seconds depending on Darkglare usage and things of the sort, so be sure to keep at least 1 Soul Shard banked for refreshing Corruption. Now this is going to be the opener for the Absolute Corruption build instead of the Writhe and Agony build for Trash and Mythic Plus. I should mention beforehand that if there is a priority mob in the actual pack you're pulling, it's important and worthwhile to open on that one with Seed of Corruption into Haunt and then Phantom Singularity versus opening on a random mob in that pack because it'll provide more additional, I guess you say, burst damage into that priority mob. That being said, let's say this training dummy here, we'll mark it with an X is going to be our priority mob here. So the tank's going to run in, we're going to pre-pull here, we're going to precast our Seed of Corruption right into a Haunt, and drop our Phantom Singularity here. If you have Dark Soul Misery, you can hit it here, and we're going to basically just spread our agonies like normal again. Now the main difference here, obviously, is that Corruption is permanent, so we're going to get back to our main mob here, put up a few Unstable Afflictions, hit our Darkglare into Deathbolt. Obviously, I mentioned before, if you're trying to not really prioritize one mob here and mainly trying to actually burn all of them out at the same time, it's more important and relevant to actually spread out your Unstable Afflictions here. But regardless of that, it doesn't really matter a whole lot. You also don't have to save a Seed of Corruption here, or a Shard for Seed of Corruption, I should say, because our Corruptions are permanent. So you want to refresh your actual agonies here before they fall. They are at 10 stacks versus 15 because we're running Absolute Corruption. And as you can see here, our damage isn't going to be as powerful, or as Agony's not going to ramp up as much as it did when we were actually running Writhe and Agony here. It's about an 8 to 10% DPS contribution difference here. But you can see Corruption's giving a lot more damage percentage here as well. This actual build is a decent bit easier than running the actual Writhe and Agony build, but if you do have multiple sudden onset pieces, you'll gain a lot more from running the Writhe and Agony build in Mythic Plus. As I mentioned before as well, it really just comes down to if the trash is going to live long enough for Agony to ramp up to 15 stacks, and then if you can actually maintain all of your Agony stacks and dots while also maintaining your Corruption. Now, as far as single target talents go for Affliction, there's not a huge difference from our actual Mythic Plus talents, as you'll see right here. In the level 15 row, the only real option we have here is once again still Deathbolt. Unfortunately, like I mentioned before, Drain Soul and Nightfall are just drastically undertuned right now, and Deathbolt also synergizes really well with your opener and Darkglare. Now in the level 30 row for Affliction, we really only have 2 actual viable choices for single target encounters, and it's either Siphon Life or Writhe and Agony. Writhe and Agony is going to be stronger than Siphon Life on encounters where there's ads present, and they live long enough for your Agony to actually reach its full potential of 15 stacks. It's worth mentioning it's also very powerful with the sudden onset Azerite trait, and it's worth simming on a site like raidbots.com if you have 3 sudden onset traits straight up against Siphon Life for pure single target encounters, as sudden onset with Wrath and Agony is just that strong. Now, as I mentioned before, if you don't have 3 out of 3 sudden onset Azerite pieces at a high enough item level, then Siphon Life is going to be the go-to talent you want for most of all your single target encounters. I myself don't have 3 out of 3 sudden onset Azerite pieces at a high enough item level to beat out my other non-sudden onset pieces, so Siphon Life is my highest simming talent in this row over Wrath and Agony. In the level 45 row, our options are Demon Skin, Burning Rush, and Dark Pact. You can use Dark Pact on certain bosses where there's going to be a lot of hard-hitting abilities like Zool for soaking pools or things of the sort, but the vast majority of the time I just run Burning Rush, as having the extra speed on encounters like Zekvoss or other things we have to move a lot is really powerful. In the level 60 row, the choices are Sow the Seeds, Phantom Singularity, and Vile Taint, and especially when it comes to single target, our only option here is Phantom Singularity. It's a strong single target DPS gain, as well as providing a decent bit of damage on fights like Zekvoss when the ads spawn, and it's pretty much the only talent worth anything in this row for single target based encounters. In the level 75 row, we have the option of Dark Fury, Mortal Coil, or Demonic Circle, and in my opinion, Demonic Circle is the clear-cut winner here. It provides a lot of mobility and utility on pretty much almost every boss encounter, as well as being able to cheese certain mechanics on bosses. In the level 90 row, we have the option of Shadow's Embrace, or Shadow Embrace I should say, Haunt, and Grimoire of Sacrifice. Once again, like I mentioned a little bit in the Mythic Plus talent video a second ago, Haunt is the clear-cut winner here for single target encounters, and even the vast majority of raid encounters in Uldir in general. Grimoire of Sacrifice just does less damage than Haunt on single target encounters, and Shadow's Embrace pretty much does exactly the same. It's a 9% damage increase versus Haunt being a 10% damage increase. There is a tiny bit of travel time with Haunt, but you can get a good bit of play on it with fights like Vectis, where you can toss it on the ad when it's around 80% or so health. It'll die and reset Haunt's cooldown. You can toss it back on the boss once you switch back to him. And finally, in the level 100 row, we have 3 options, one being Soul Conduit, the second being Creeping Death, and the third one actually being Dark Soul Misery. Realistically here, when it comes to single target encounters, your really only viable option here is going to be Dark Soul Misery for the vast majority of them. Creeping Death is semi-close and still a powerful talent, but you're going to gain a whole lot from Dark Soul Misery in your openers with Darkglare, as well as it being a powerful 2-minute cooldown that you can line up with priority adds or certain parts of the fight where you need extra burst damage. Now, the actual Affliction single target opener running the Siphon Life build is pretty simple. Basically, you just want to cast your Haunt about 2 seconds before the boss is pulled, so we'll do that here. Right into Agony, Siphon Life, and Corruption. Hit Berserking, Dark Soul, and dump as many Unstable Afflictions here as you can, basically. It should be 4 to 5. Into Phantom Singularity, Darkglare, and then Deathbolt. You'll have a few seconds here to maintain your dots and fill with Shadow Bolt here until Haunt needs to be refreshed, which you can do right now. You have about 5 seconds here to fill with Shadow Bolts once again. Once your 3 dots hit their Pandemic window, which you do now, start refreshing them here. And then basically it's just maintenance from this point, barring setting up for a Darkglare window, which will happen every 3 minutes, or setting up for a Deathbolt, which really isn't even a thing anymore. Refresh your Haunt here. I'll roll 1 to 2 Unstable Afflictions here because we have 4 to 5 shards here. Refresh my dots in the Pandemic window again. Refresh Agony. Actually, refresh my Unstable Affliction here, and launch a Deathbolt. There's not really a whole lot else to it. Once you get past the extra opener, which really isn't even that complicated with actual play and just repetition, it's basically just maintenance, barring a Darkglare window or half setting up for a Deathbolt, which you really don't even do in general. Now, I did want to touch here briefly on Deathbolt's actual usage, because I talked a little bit about it in the single target video we just saw. So basically, if we enter a natural rotation here, we've got our Agony, Siphon Life, and Corruption rolling here. I'm just going to fill with Shadow Bolt for this example's sake. Let's say Deathbolt's coming off the cooldown in about 5 seconds here. Our dots aren't in their Pandemic window yet, but they're pretty close, so we're going to actually wait for their Pandemic window. We're going to start refreshing here, refresh Corruption, Siphon Life, and then Agony. Roll 1 Unstable Affliction and launch the Deathbolt here. As you can see here, the main reason we don't roll multiple Unstable Afflictions to do it is we can roll multiples here. By the time we get to 5 Unstable Afflictions, our Agony, Siphon Life, and Corruption really don't have a whole lot of time at all remaining on their duration. And the fact that they make up such a large portion of our damage really affects actual Deathbolt's overall damage when it hits your target. So the main rule you want to focus on here is basically just rolling 1 Unstable Affliction and keeping a decent amount of time remaining on your Agony, Corruption, and Siphon Life, but mostly your Agony if you can. Now, as far as Darkglare usage goes outside your opener, basically about 20 to 25 seconds before it comes off a cooldown, you're going to want to be pooling resources and shards when it does come off a cooldown. So let's say we're about 10 seconds before it comes off a cooldown. We're sitting at about 3 shards here. You're going to get to 4. At this point, we're going to start refreshing our Agony. You have 3 dots a little early here. That's fine. Refresh our 3. If you have Dark Soul Misery, pop it here. Put up your 5 unstable afflictions. You should generate a 5th shard here. Perfect, like we just did there. Put up your Phantom Singularity, Darkglare, and launch a Deathbolt, which should be lined up pretty well with Darkglare's cooldown coming off a CD every 3 or so minutes. I do want to mention here that it's important to only use Dark Soul Misery in conjunction with Darkglare if you're only going to get one more use of it during the entire course of the fight. You can use it when you're initial opener, obviously, and basically I use Dark Soul Misery almost on cooldown, except for there's a certain part of the fight where we're holding it for with like priority adds or things of the sort. But it is important to hold Dark Soul Misery once you're only going to get one more usage out of it for your final Darkglare usage as well. As far as pets go in Mythic Plus and raid encounters, pet damage has been normalized in BFA, but each pet does bring a unique ability or two with it. Your Imp brings a 5% stamina buff for you, and it's the best pet at target swapping due to the fact that it actually casts spells from range. Our Voidwalker has finally shed his tanking chains in a sense, and is our only pet with an AoE based ability. So if you don't need an interrupt or a purge, the Voidwalker should be your go-to for Mythic Plus trash. And finally, our Fell Hunter brings both a purge and an interrupt with it, making it a great choice for Mythic Plus and encounters where you will need either. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope this gave you all a better understanding of Affliction's Azerite traits, talent builds, rotation, and other aspects of the spec. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comment section below, and I'll be sure to get back to you. If you're interested in any of the weak lures you see here, there's a link to my Discord as well as my Twitch in the description below, where you can find them all. As I mentioned at the start of the video, I will be releasing guides of both Destruction and Demonology as well, so if you want to see those and help support the channel, be sure to smash that subscribe button. Best of luck in Uldir, guys, and I'll see you all in Azeroth. Peace.